Hi everyone, I'm Liz Hunter. I'm the Associate Director of Field Sales for Workman Publishing, coming at you from my apartment in Brooklyn, New York, my fall 2020 reps picks. We've all been through moments in life where something external shook us out of our complacency. A near miss in a car accident, a natural disaster, or a scary test result at the doctor can all do it. After those moments, we're awakened to all of the good in our lives, all of the things that we have taken for granted. For Christy Nelson, this happened when she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer at age 33. She woke up every day just happy to be alive and newly awake to all that she had to be grateful for. Christy is now the executive director of a network for grateful living, where she works with Brother David Stendal-Rast, a Benedictine monk, and the subject of a fascinating episode of the podcast on being. You may be familiar with this duo from the book Everyday Gratitude, which has been a strong seller for us. Through both her personal and professional experiences, Christy is uniquely situated to be an expert on living gratefully. And she takes that expertise and makes it into this very actionable program that anyone can do in the book, Wake Up Grateful. A few examples for Christy's advice. Instead of being caught up in the question of whether the glass is half full or half empty, just be grateful to have a glass at all. No, seriously. Think about how you got that glass in the first place. The number of humans who had to touch it, from the person who made it, to the person who decided to stock it in the store where you bought it, to the store itself where someone had to unpack it and crate it and shelve it, and the person who rang you up, and on and on and on. You get the picture. Exercises like that will really make you feel interconnected with your other humans, and that is a path to gratefulness. You could hand this book to readers who are interested in spirituality and mindfulness, like The Power of Now, or you could give it to someone who loves Brené Brown's work for its practicality and mindset shifting insights. Wake Up Grateful is an empowering message and something that, frankly, we could all use more of. Down Along with That Devil's Bones by Connor Towne O'Neill is a powerful work of journalistic nonfiction about the fight to remove Confederate monuments across the South. O'Neill is a producer on the NPR podcast White Lies. Originally from Pennsylvania, he currently teaches at Auburn University. In this book, he looks specifically at 4 monuments honoring Nathan Bedford Forrest, a general of the Confederate Army and the first Grand Wizard of the KKK. The monuments are in Selma, Alabama, Nashville, Memphis, and Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Through the course of his investigation, O'Neill argues that those who fight to literally put this man on a pedestal are practicing the selective amnesia that plagues so many white Americans. We want to pat ourselves on the back for being from the greatest democracy on earth, yet we look away from the facts of our history that conflict with that flattering image. Namely, that the institutions of slavery and white supremacy were baked into our country from its very foundation. We built statues to the military men, but ignore the fact that this particular man was fighting for the right to enslave other humans. Like in Murfreesboro, where the statue of Nathan Bedford Forrest in the center of town is only feet away from the old market where enslaved people were bought and sold. Despite the monument's boosters who claim that this is about remembering history, there is curiously no plaque or marker to indicate where the slave market was. This book hit me on a deeply personal level. I'm originally from the suburbs of Nashville, Tennessee, and I drove past one of the monuments that he covers in the book hundreds of times. Widely regarded as the Confederate monument that is so ugly it accidentally disproves white supremacy, I knew that this particular statue was created by the lawyer who defended the man who murdered Martin Luther King Jr. What I didn't know was that it was only one out of 31 monuments to Nathan Bedford Forrest in my home state. More than all of the statues of the 3 presidents from Tennessee, Jackson, Johnson, and Polk, combined. I learned so much reading this book. The thing that I thought was so brilliant about it is the monuments themselves become a lens through which we can understand the legacy of white supremacy in America and how far-reaching that is. It's from Appomattox to Charlottesville. We get into the alt-right and how that new right wing connects to leaders like Nathan Bedford Forrest and that tradition. It's a brilliant book. And beyond that, I think it's the kind of book that can help us understand what's at stake in these conversations about monuments and how to move forward and have a more productive conversation about them. I read this book in one day. I could not put it down. Down Along with That Devil's Bones is an indie next pick, and it publishes on September 29th. Tiny Love Stories comes from the New York Times column of the same name, and it's curated by the editors of Modern Love. These 175 stories are submitted by readers, and every story is less than 100 words long. These moving, inspirational, uplifting, heartwarming, and heartbreaking love stories are handpicked by the editors from the thousands of submissions they receive. I love that this book celebrates many different kinds of love: romantic, familial, platonic, parental, self-love, and all of the shades in between. This moving book is 5x7, so it's that feels good in the hand kind of size, and it would make a perfect gift for anyone who you love. Now, because the stories really speak for themselves, I'm gonna attempt to read you a couple, and I will try not to get teary, but I swear to you, this book gets me every time. Boy meets girl. They date in college. Boy drops bombshell by taking job offer in Japan. Does she want to join? Girl thinks it over and decides to take a chance. They move to Japan, then the Philippines, then back to the United States. Boy becomes girl. Girl and girl remain madly in love years later. Tiny Love Stories is coming out from Artisan December 8th. I don't know about you, but it seems like my wine intake may have gone up slightly during quarantine. So what could be a better time to actually learn about wine so I have something to show for all of these months drinking in my apartment? Enter Madeline Meyer, our author of Welcome to Wine. She's got deep roots in the world of wine. She's from a 5th-generation wine family in Switzerland, and she's furthered her apprenticeship in the wine business in the vineyards of her mother's native California. On top of that, Madeline has earned a wine specialist degree. But the feeling of this book is incredibly friendly and approachable, despite her very professional background. It covers the basics, like what kind of glass to use, how to store your wine, suggested food and wine pairings. What really sets this book apart, though, are the illustrations. I find these illustrations to be extremely helpful when you get into the more nuanced parts. How to tell if a wine has gone bad, how to develop your palate, what the aroma tells you. With these illustrations throughout and a paper over board package, this book will make a really great gift to anyone who wants to learn more about wine. Our imprint story, based in the Berkshires of Massachusetts, has a long tradition of publishing books that are practical and useful. Books about growing vegetables, raising animals, cooking, crafting. In the curious compendium of practical and obscure skills, the editors at Story have compiled hundreds of different skills, drawing from the books in their vast library. Every page has a step-by-step photos, and it's a delightful mix of things you might actually do, like spatchcock a chicken or sew a pillowcase or fix a broken window, and things that you didn't know you needed to know, like how to French braid a horse's tail, or teach your cat to jump through a hoop, or make a hammock. It's this great big book. It's 9.5 by 12 inches in trim size. It's 344 pages, full color. This is like the best coffee table book ever. It's beautiful, it's useful, and you'll learn some things. Stories Compendium of Practical and Obscure Skills is coming out September 15th.
Hey, indie booksellers. I'm Christian Westerman from Workman Publishing. I'm looking forward to connecting with you guys over great books during the show and hearing more about how things are going at your store. Here are some of the fall 2020 titles that I'm especially excited about. I've got How to Astronaut from Terry Virts, An Insider's Guide to Leaving Planet Earth. It's on sale this September, but this is different from other books about astronauts. It focuses more on the daily part of it. There's 51 short chapters in this book where Terry takes you through training, launch, orbit, what spacewalking is like, deep space, and re-entry. Terry Virts, he's the star of this space show in this book. His personality really makes How to Astronaut a great reading experience. He's charismatic, and it's written with such a warm and funny voice. You get a feeling in reading each short chapter that his childish wonderment of space has never left him. He's so enthusiastic about everything, and knowing how tough astronaut work is after reading this, I could only marvel at Terry's unflinching enthusiasm despite the fatigue, risks, and responsibility. It's really inspiring. He talks about things like in-flight entertainment. Yes, they have Netflix and they have Hulu too. He's also talks about what astronauts dream of and falling asleep and being in sleep while you're floating in midair. How do they go to the bathroom, for instance? It's a really fun book. But really, the best part of this book is the astronaut's perspective. Yes, the universe is immense, beautiful, but it's also cold, barren, and inhospitable. Going to space made him realize just how much he cherishes home, which is Earth. I'm presenting At the Edge of the Height, which is in the Edelweiss catalog by Catherine Seligman. This book is the winner of the 2019 Penn Bellwether Prize for Socially Engaged Fiction. This is a biennial award given by the PEN America and Barbara Kingsolver to a U.S. citizen for a previously unpublished work of fiction that addresses issues of social justice. This is from Algonquin Books, and they've had an amazing strike rate with this award, as is a prize that has introduced some of their best talents to the world, like Lisa Coe, the author of The Leavers, Hillary Jordan, Heidi Duro, and Naomi Benaran. At the Edge of the Height is an important debut novel that expands on the conversation of homelessness in America with a very human story of one 20-something runaway as she discovers her self-worth. The book takes place in San Francisco, which is a city that's been used as a talking point on homelessness in America by political pundits that really don't offer any solutions. The reader is taken through 10 cities, but they're juxtaposed with the Silicon Valley of Google and all these other corporations that are based out of California. And just this time of Trump's America where it's jobs, 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 and America is doing just great. This is the other side. This is taking you into the homelessness communities of San Francisco. The title references the Haight-Ashbury neighborhood of San Francisco, and we follow Maddie Donaldo. She's a 20-something girl with street smarts, but is really directionless at this point in her life. She's left Los Angeles because she feels disowned by her father, and she's also in a lot of disagreements with her mother. So she leaves Los Angeles feeling like she's convinced of who she is, she's going to get away from it all, she's going to be someone different now. And the book actually opens with Maddie finding a murdered teenage boy in a park who's been stabbed, and she experiences the last moments of his life. And this boy is, as the story progresses, is really a mirror of who Maddie is in a way. He is similarly has run away from home, doesn't know who he is, feels that his parents didn't love him enough, and just did not fit in at home. And it's really just this fantastic book about Maddie being involved in the police investigation for the murderer of this boy. She becomes more in touch with the parents of the victim and starts to question things that she's been so used to for the years that she'd been living on the run. Like, why is she stealing things for no reason, really? She starts to care for people that are beyond her immediate friends on the streets. She has a cute dog named Root who follows her everywhere, but there's also human love that she's starting to find again with this victim's family, who are so upset about the death of their son. Maddie really represents homelessness in America today, but also the feeling of uncertainty at this moment of the millennial generation, where you have a society that is moving at a lightning speed and an economy that has priced all these millennials out in terms of affordability of rent and joblessness. And I think all these problems have just been exacerbated by coronavirus, unfortunately. But this book, Maddie's in constant movement. She's being pushed around physically. She's being told that she's not wanted in certain areas of San Francisco. People look the other way and ignore her. But there is still such a great sense of hope in her and her story, and her finding out who she is, and really breaking down all the things that she believed. She starts to question why, in fact, she did run away. And this book is just fantastic. It shows that change comes through caring for people. And I think it's going to even make, it's going to bring homelessness into the national conversation and make even more socially responsible readers. We're comping to The Leavers by Lisa Ko because it's also won this award. But in a similar way, it's about the unraveling of the American dream, debt, as well as hardship in America. And it's just this through line of powerful storytelling. From Meryl Marco, Emmy Award-winning head writer for the original David Letterman show, and one of the most renowned and influential comedy writers in recent history, We Saw Scenery is a funny and poignant, spot-on-self graphic novel. It's written in a diary format that takes us through Marco's preteen and teen years. Marco hits all the marks with her 1960s pop cultural references, family dramas, and so-called romantic interludes through the voice of a teenage girl. The older and wiser adult Marco makes frequent appearances throughout the book to dialogue with her younger self, and alternately offers withering criticism or big sister empathy as the situation should require, which really makes for some great banter. In addition to the idea that as children and adolescents we blow everything out of proportion, the situations Marco covers will be relatable to any adult reflecting on their own youth. Her literal and self-deprecating style of humor is in moments like when she refers to her hippocampus, which we know as the area of the brain thought to be principally involved in storing long-term memories and in making those memories resistant to forgetting. But in We Saw Scenery, an actual school campus with big hippos roaming around eating grass, with Meryl asking them questions of what she was thinking in the moments of some particularly embarrassing moments. The book's title makes reference to the cross-country family road trip that happens mid-diary that Marco endured for the purpose of relocating from Florida to San Francisco, and as such is more of an ironic joke in terms of summarizing her adolescence. Capturing the hilarious difficulties of growing up, We Saw Scenery is perfect for fans of Ali Brosh, Roz Chast, and Linda Barry. So get the tea out, and it's got to be English breakfast for these books. Myrtle Hardcastle Mysteries is a new debut middle grade series set in Victorian England. It's reminiscent of Harriet the Spy, Flavia de Luce, and classic books like The Hardy Boys. It's intended for middle graders, but really getting a quick adult following because of how cozy it is, perfect for the fall, and some hot cocoa, for instance, and as well as how well written they are. Readers are introduced to a new heroine, Myrtle Hardcastle, who is a spunky and smart 12-year-old girl who's a Victorian girl of science obsessed with the new sciences of criminology. She's determined to seek out the truth even when nobody else believes her. As one reviewer put it on Goodreads, it's hard to dislike this girl's determination. Books 1 and 2 simultaneously pub this fall on October 6th, and Premeditated Myrtle is the first book in the series, which was recently announced as a Kids Indie Next List pick. When her elderly neighbor dies, Myrtle is the only one who suspects foul play, and her determined sleuthing takes her into the world of rare plants and forensic science. Myrtle is assisted by a governess and her mentor, the invincible Miss Judson. Together they investigate. Myrtle uses her medical knowledge from her late mother and her legal knowledge from her father to ultimately solve the case with a cast of interesting characters that range from a legal aide to a writer. How to Get Away with Myrtle, and for any Poirot fans or anyone that likes Murder on the Orient Express, this one's perfect. It's a classic Victorian railways holiday in the countryside that is livened up by jewel thieves and murder. Finally, Elizabeth C. Bunce, the author, turned in book 3 recently called Cold-Blooded Myrtle and is planned for a fall 2021 release. I personally absolutely adored Myrtle's strong relationships with her father,
who is a court prosecutor, and also her relationship with Miss Judson. These three main characters, Myrtle, her father, and Miss Judson, all have moments of conflict in their relationships when they each want different things and they disagree and argue. But in the end, those conflicts strengthen and invigorate their love for each other as they learn from one another. This is brilliant writing from Elizabeth C. Bunce.
Then we have On Fragile Waves, also from Erewhon, but this one is more literary, and it's a profoundly human story. It follows an Afghani family fleeing war who sets off for Australia to start anew. It really centers on a girl named Fairuza, and she's kind of reliving her experiences in a magical, realist way of dreams, as well as what she witnesses when she's moved to Australia, sort of the experiences of the war in Afghanistan, as well as the assimilation in Australia. And I think that what's even really more important here is both areas, both homes to her now are in conflict. In Australia, you have sort of the conversation around immigrants, whether they belong or not. That is a form of conflict. And then obviously the violence and the war that was in Afghanistan. Really, really interesting point of view. And this speaks to immigration, the difficulties of quote unquote assimilating. Fairuza runs up against xenophobia, but also what to do about her family traditions and how she traditionally dresses, for instance. But it's for readers of literary fiction about social questions and exploring contemporary political issues, and any reader of speculative fiction with political themes and beautiful prose. Lily traveled to Kabul, Jakarta, and Melbourne, interviewing asylum seekers, refugees, and detainees for this book. During an internship in Canberra, she researched private companies that handle screening, detainment, imprisonment, basically the dirty work of the government, and was really astounded at what they do. And it just feels like such an important book, and it's coming out this December. It really reminded me of Valeria Luiselli's The Lost Children Archives, which is another grand, harrowing journey relived through imagination with urgency and empathy.
Written by an expert in genomics and author of the Book of Humans and A Brief History of Everyone Who Ever Lived, Adam Rutherford's How to Argue with a Racist tackles the issue of race by concisely, scientifically, and humanely unpicking the history of people from a geneticist's perspective. In doing so, Rutherford completely dismantles common cultural and stereotypical thinking about the differences between races. Genomics is precisely the field that white supremacists jump on to provide pseudoscientific justification of their flawed ideologies. Another wrongly held belief is thinking that because marathon winners of late have either been Kenyan or Ethiopian, they must have a genetic leg up. The actual science shows that a variant of ACE, the so-called endurance gene said to be prevalent in East Africans, was shown to appear just as frequently in people of European descent. The relative recent streak of Kenyan and Ethiopian champions comes down to a strong cultural investment in distance running, supported by world-class training. This is one example of how Adam does a superb job of abolishing any argument for race science. And he is no stranger to how hurtful these assumptions can be as someone who is Indo-Guyanese. In one sentence in the book directed at racists, he says, "Science is my ally, not yours, and your fight is not just with me, but with reality." With racist pseudoscience on the rise, seen in current events like how coronavirus is being openly called a Chinese virus by politicians, which feeds nationalism, fuels hatred, and endangers lives, to which Adam elaborates further on in the book, How to Argue with a Racist is needed now more than ever. It shows us that science is the most powerful tool we have to combat racism, and outfits anyone to talk about race in an enlightened, sensitive, and scientifically supported way.
Hi everyone, my name is Ali McNamara and I'm the sales coordinator with the field sales team at Workman, and I'm going to be sharing with you a couple of my favorite books from the fall 2020 list. Made in China tells the story of Sun Yi, a political prisoner in a forced labor camp in China, and the SOS letter that begins author Amelia Pang's investigation. In 2012, an Oregon mother named Julie Keith opened up a package of Halloween decorations. The cheap foam headstones had been $5 at Kmart, too good a deal to pass up. But when she opened the box, something fell out that she wasn't expecting. An SOS letter, handwritten in broken English by the prisoner who'd made and packaged the items. Pang's writing is both clear and insightful without being detached. She illustrates the horror and devastation that prisoners like Sun Yi face every day. She also offers a glimmer of hope towards the end, with small things we can do every day to fight for change and the abolishment of forced labor, and some larger, though she admits that we as individuals cannot stop the Chinese government's abuse of power. That's something that will need to be a much larger effort. Kids are the future is something I heard frequently growing up, and I would always think, well, duh. And now we have As the World Burns by Lee Vandervoo, and my duh moment has never felt so justified. Vandervoo covers the story of Juliana versus United States, what will likely become one of the biggest civil rights cases in history. 21 young people are suing the United States government over climate change, arguing that the government's ignorance and disregard towards the ever-increasing number of natural disasters, wildfires, disappearing coastlines, mass flooding, droughts, is a threat to their constitutional right to life. This book simultaneously filled me with rage and dread. How did we get here? Why doesn't the government care? What are we going to do? And a kind of hope that feels powerful. Because I know these kids are fighting the good fight and they're giving it their all, and their perseverance is not only inspiring more generations of other kids desperate for change, but adults too. I Believe in You is by the Dream Team sister duo, Sabrina and Eunice Moyle. They're the team behind Hello Lucky, and they recently had 2 books come out with Workman on the most recent spring list, ABC Dance and Goodnight Baboon. This is our 3rd book with us, and I love this book. I mean, how could I not? It's a unicorn and dragon BFF duo that are all about validating one's feelings and boosting confidence. Count me in. The artwork is adorable, playful, and colorful, right alongside messages like, if you feel sad, I'll be right here. Got things to say? Well, I'm all ears. This book is destined to become a classic and a staple for every child, and maybe even adults. Now we have Baking at the 20th Century Cafe, and this is truly the cookbook of my dreams. And honestly, Michelle Holzine is probably my hero. She's without a doubt my style icon. In case you're not already familiar with her, Michelle is the owner of the 20th Century Cafe in San Francisco and is basically the queen of European desserts. And she's blessed us all with her magnificent cookbook that's coming out this October. The photography in this book is next level. It was painful for me to even flip through the pages because I want everything. There's apricot cherry cobbler, Meyer lemon pudding tart, honey cake, date pistachio tort, and so much more. Everyone who loves dessert and or happiness needs this cookbook. I promise you. Furia tells the story of Camila Hassan, a teenage girl living in Rosario, Argentina with a double life. Not only is she trying to keep her relationship with an international soccer star under wraps, she's also hiding the fact that she's a soccer star. When her team qualifies for the South American tournament, Camila gets the chance to see just how far her talents can take her, perhaps even as far as a scholarship to a college in the United States. This book blew me away. Camila is not only rejecting the idea that girls can't play football, she's rejecting an entire culture that says girls are lesser, that they're weak. I'll be sharing Furia with all of the girls and women in my life for many years to come.